This episode of 2.5 Geeks is brought to you by SanDisk. For 25 years, SanDisk has been expanding the possibilities of storage, delivering innovative products that companies and consumers count on. To find out more about how you can be ready for the future, visit sandisk.com/storage.
Coming up on 2.5 Geeks, we're going to round up some motherboards, talk about an SSD, Surface Pro 3, Fire TV, and you won't believe this, and more.
It's rocking the benchmarks. We're going to up the ante a little bit. Processing power, I kind of understand this.
Hey everybody, welcome to 2.5 Geeks. I'm Aya Zakhtar alongside Dave Altavilla and Marco Chiappetta. We have been separated for far too long. We had to reconvene today because it's been just too dang long. So let's talk and ask Marco first. Marco, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good. We have a big crew of people coming over. Tomorrow is the holiday. We're not sure when this is going to get posted, but tomorrow's a holiday. Have tons of family coming over, and my house is a wreck, so I've been scrubbing and cleaning and running around like a madman today. But I'm good.
Dave, have you been scrubbing and cleaning and running around like a madman today?
I was running around like a madman today. I shot down the Cape to grab the boat for the season. I have a small little runabout that we dragged the family around on various waterways with. And so did that. And now I'm commencing with the hedonism and eating and drinking far too much. So it's all good.
We need a picture of Dave and that cat meme of I should buy a boat. Can't wait to see that. If you do come up with that, definitely you could tweet it at HotHardware. That's right. An early plug for the Twitter account of HotHardware. Take that. Really thrown the game in a loop here. Let's talk about motherboards because we got to get down to business. Marco, you guys had a roundup of 5 motherboards based around Intel's Series 9 chip or 9 series chipset, I think it is.
Yes.
They range in prices from like $189 to $379. Where do we start with this?
So we start with what processors they're going to support. So I think this launch was kind of screwy. Things were all over the place. You're correct in saying that Intel launched their 9 series chipsets. Now, normally when Intel launches a chipset, it comes alongside a new processor. That's not the case this time around. So the 9 series initially is comprised of the top-of-the-line Z97, and then there's the mainstream H97 chipsets. Now, these chips will support current-gen Haswell-based processors, socket 1150 processors. They'll also support the upcoming Devil's Canyon, the Haswell refresh processors that should overclock better. We should be hearing more about those soon. And it will also support the desktop Broadwell-based processors, which are a little further out. Those are the refresh based on, I believe it was 14 nanometer. I'm drawing a blank, but I think it's a 14 nanometer process for those. Now, it's the Z97. I did a roundup of 5 boards with boards from EVGA, MSI, and Gigabyte. And the Z97 chipset on these boards is very similar to the Z87, but with a few additions. The biggest addition is support for M.2 solid-state drives. Now, as we've talked about many times when we've reviewed SATA SSDs, you'll know we sort of hit the bottleneck of the SATA interface. There's only so much data a SATA connection can move. M.2 can move a gigabyte per second out of these little tiny M.2 SSDs. So that's a really cool upgrade for the chipset. On top of that, I kind of like these refreshed boards and chipsets because the manufacturers have had time to really play with Z87. So they've worked out lots of kinks, and all of the boards I looked at that came with Z97, they were all killer boards, though prices were all over the map. And the reason for that are the number of features and sort of the focus of the boards. The more mainstream boards like the Gigabyte Z97 UD5, I think it was $180. That's a nice board, but mainstream, no killer bells and whistles. Or you can go look crazy top of the line like the Z97. Let me get the model so I don't forget. Hold on one second. I'm drawing a blank. It is the Z97 Gaming G1 Wi-Fi-BK. So that board has
Can't believe you couldn't remember that, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising that one didn't just roll off the tongue. But that board comes with basically everything. Wi-Fi built in, Bluetooth built in, tons of overclocking features, huge heat sinks for cooling, geared for overclockers and high performance. So there's just this huge range of boards out there coming.
Yeah, so looking at all these different boards, and the thing I noticed right away were all the different ports on that. I think one of them had like 4 different outputs for video alone, and I was just staring. I'm like, is that a VGA port still? I think one of them had one of these. What else sets apart these from each other? I mean, you're talking about some of these lower end ones. They're meant for not serious overclockers. That's again the GAZ97X Gaming G1 Wi-Fi BK. I mean,
Right.
clearly with that name, it does sound amazing. But were there any features about any particular one of these motherboards that you were like, you know what, if I had to pick out of the 5, this is the one I should go with?
If I'm spending, well, I'm going to answer both questions actually. So first, you said what sort of differentiates them. The Z97 chipset on its own is fairly feature rich. You have tons of SATA ports, tons of USB 3 ports, the M.2 support, PCI Express 3.0. Basically everything 90% of PCs are going to need. Now, the more mainstream boards sort of exploit everything in the chipset and maybe don't add too much on top of that. Then you go to the higher end boards that cost a little more. You have everything the chipset offers, but then maybe you'll have a companion USB 3 controller for more USB 3 ports. Maybe you'll have a killer NIC for lower latency gaming. Maybe you'll have Wi-Fi built in. Maybe you have features like voltage checkpoints if you're an overclocker and you want to really get down and dirty and check voltages right on the board. Or maybe you have buttons on the board for overclocking without using any software entering the BIOS. One of the Gigabyte boards, you can actually just hit buttons and alter the FSB or multiplier. So there's kind of a wide range of differences that separate these boards. And I hate to use this as as a blanket statement, but typically the more expensive ones are the ones that have tons of extra stuff built in.
Yeah, I was looking at it's the Gigabyte Z97X SoC Force. That's the one that had all the extra buttons on it.
Right.
And you have that nicely laid out, explaining what each button does. Wow, man, this stuff is. I'm just looking at this like a long time ago. This was not like this, but somebody say ultra durable on them. Why do they have this designation of ultra durable? I'm just, as a novice, explain that to me, would you?
So on one level is pure marketing. It's the motherboard guys coming up with cool names for some of the higher end components they use on the boards. So if you look at I'm not going to name any names, and it's not any of the boards in this roundup, but if you look at really cheap motherboards out there, they may use no-name capacitors. They're not all solid capacitors. They might use no-name chokes and things like that. Whereas some of the better brands and the better quality motherboards are using, top of the line Japanese caps, the best ferrite core chokes and all this kind of stuff. And the manufacturers that use those better components use sort of these umbrella statements like ultra durable to describe all of those features, sort of built in. So on one level, it is a lot of marketing, but those higher end MSI Gigabyte boards, EVGA, Asus, like all of those premier brands, when you see the higher end boards that have these components, they're typically just better boards. They'll last longer, they run cooler, they deliver power better, they're more overclockable. So if you were to just look at benchmark scores, there's not much to differentiate boards because all of the functionality is really on the CPU and the chipset's kind of like an I/O hub. But the better boards are they're better all around, more tweakability, more overclockability. I think you get the gist.
So you're basically getting what you paid for with this. If you're going to pay a bit more, you're going to get more. Yeah. Is there anything else you should say about these motherboards? I have a tendency to move on too quickly.
No, the one quick thing I'll say, because you do get what you pay for. When you pay for one of those premier boards, you are getting a lot that you don't get in some of the more mainstream boards. However, if you're looking to build a system and you're not going to be pushing the overclocking too far, and you're just going to use a single graphics card, and you don't care about audio quality, you can totally get away with one of the more affordable boards and still have a really nice rig. But if you want, nothing but the best, all of the highest end stuff, you're going to run multiple graphics cards, and you want to make sure that you can overclock to the max and not have to worry about a board being a limiting factor. Then it's worth springing for one of the better boards.
Let's move on to Dave. He hasn't said anything in like days. So there's this piece by this unknown fellow, Dave Altavilla, did this review of this OCZ RevoDrive 350 PCI Express SSD. And there's a quote. I want to say the quote first. You got to explain this. In the meantime, we have a new favorite PCI Express SSD on hand here at the HotHardware.com test labs. and it's none other than OCZ Storage Solutions RevoDrive 350. Okay, this thing had to be amazing if you're going to say this. Could you back up this beautiful conclusion you had at this piece?
Yeah, some pretty serious accolades there for OCZ, no question about it. And they deserve it. And you know what's interesting is, Marco's talking about these really high-end motherboards, and here I am about to talk about a high-end PCI Express solid-state drive that is geared for. It's not for the enterprise. It's not for like a high-end server, but it's for the enthusiast workstation set. And I guess it sort of underscores that even though we've got all these tablets and smartphones and, ultrabooks hitting the market, all this mobile technology hitting the market, enthusiast computing and high performance desktop computing is alive and well. And it is very much still a growth market. And so there's manufacturers coming out with lots of cool stuff. And OCZ, like a phoenix risen from the ashes, right? Acquired by Toshiba earlier this year, came out with a reiteration, a rehash of really a revamp and upgrade to their original RevoDrive X3, RevoDrive 3 X2 was the previous generation product. And that was a by 4 PCI Express, so by 4 connection on the Edge card, PCI Express card. This is a by 8 PCI Express Gen 2 card, and it is ridiculously fast. So the performance you're talking about here is measured in gigabytes per second. Okay, so specifically, this drive is capable of 1,800 megabytes or 1.8 gigabytes per second reads, and 1.7 gigabytes or 1,700 megabytes per second on writes. That's peak throughput. And so it is stupid fast. And we had put it through the benchmarks. Last generation product was also ridiculously fast. But this product is faster. It's better all around. It's made with next generation 19 nanometer Toshiba NAND flash. And it's great stuff. It's a fantastic product. No question about it.
So let's go to the pain point. I mean, the throughput sounds insane. 1.8 gigabytes per second. That's just ridiculously fast, except if your wallet's not deep, you're going to be upset because I think this a 960 gigabyte version costs $1,300.
Yeah, go ahead.
The low cost. I think that's the lowest cost per gigabyte. If you're going to get a 240 gigabyte, you're going to pay $530. So it's a little bit pricey per gigabyte. What can you talk about when it comes to the pricing structure?
Yeah, the pricing structure is basically on the order of about 2x per gig of a standard SATA SSD. But you really need to think about this from a standpoint of performance. You would need to RAID 4 of these drives up to begin to equate in RAID 0, to equate the kind of throughput that you can get from you would need to RAID, 4 SATA drives up to get the kind of throughput you would in this one RevoDrive 350 by OCZ. That's the kind of performance we're talking about here. And so, yes, there's a premium involved. This drive is comprised of up to 4 SandForce NAND controllers, and those are some of the best solid-state storage NAND controllers on the market currently, and also a specialty OCZ special ASIC that does the RAID, the load balancing, and some of the different load balancing and management algorithms associated with getting these 4 controllers to all talk in unison and perform like they do in this card. So yeah, it's a premium, no question about it. The 240 gig drive at $529, the 480 gig drive at $829. You're talking about 2x the price of a standard SATA SSD, but you're really talking 4x the performance. And Marco talked about, on the motherboards these days, you get SATA, 6 gigabit per second SATA technology on board. And, there is a bottleneck. The average SATA SSD maxes out these days at about 500 megabytes reads and writes, 500 megabyte per second. So this is up to almost 4x that. And so you got to play to pay, or pay to play, excuse me. And, really, for me, PCI Express SSDs are sort of a passion. I mean, I just look for the next one that comes out on the market. This, I mean, you can spend a lot more For example, Intel has a PCI Express SSD, LSI's warp drive. I mean, the list goes on. There's a few heavy hitters that are more geared towards the server and really high-end data center environment for solid-state storage, where throughput in a database application or web server application, where you have lots of transactions, IO transactions going on. They're actually, in some cases, for example, a 400 gig or maybe like the 300 gig LSI warp drive, for example, you're talking several $1,000s for an SLC NAND-based PCI Express product from one of these higher end, again, data center targeted drives. So here you've got sort of a hybrid, an in-between step where OCZ has come to the workstation enthusiast class market and said, okay, we're going to give you all the performance in an MLC drive, so much lower cost, right? MLC flash, still, give you a warranty, a 3-year warranty, and I think it's rated for 50 gigabytes per day of writes for 3 years under typical use. So pretty solid endurance, and you're talking about a fraction of the really high-end products out there with the same level of performance in the PCI Express space, and 4x, up to 4x of SATA drive. So, cost is relative and value is relative. I can tell you, you plug one of these into a machine and anything you do happens pretty much instantly. And when I say that, I mean, obviously, there's certain limitations with, Windows and all that good stuff. But, if you're crunching big video files, and you're doing lots of work with just large multi-gigabyte files back and forth, maybe you're crunching big databases, maybe you're gaming, and things like level loads happen almost instantaneously comparatively to maybe just a single SATA drive, or certainly versus a standard SSD. So it's impressive performance that you really can feel. It's very tangible.
Yeah, I'm looking at the comment section of the review, and I got Kevin here saying, glad to hear OCZ didn't mess around succeeding the RevoDrive 3X2. And another person here, Christopher, wrote, I will put this as politely as possible. I am becoming aroused.
Gotta love the geeks.
Yeah, the numbers sounded amazing, and that's why I was smirking. I'm like, Christopher, my hat's off to you. Get help. Let's move on to this. Let's go talk about the Surface Pro 3. Microsoft unveiled the successor to the Surface Pro 2. It's actually thinner than the Pro 2. It's larger because it's moving to a 12-inch screen with a 3:2 aspect ratio, stylus support, all kinds of fun stuff. Marco, let's talk about the Surface Pro 3. I actually think I want to believe that there's a tablet that can replace a laptop. Microsoft claims this is.
It can. Here it is, by the way. So this is the guy with the light blue cover attached. So yes, you nailed on a bunch of the salient points. I am neck deep in the full review right now. I am testing, shooting video, and doing all kinds of funky tests with this thing. And let me just get some specs out of the way first. Microsoft really is going for the gusto here. The Surface Pro 3 is going to be available initially in 5 different models. There's going to be one based on a Core i3 with the 64 gig SSD and 4 gigs of RAM, one with the Core i5 and 128 gig SSD and 4 gigs of RAM. And then there are 3 8 gig models, one with the Core i5 and 2 Core i7s. And the 2 Core i7s, one comes with 256 gig, the other comes with 512 gig. Pricing ranges from $799 at the low end to $1949 at the high end. Now, basically, you take everything that's good about a multi-touch Ultrabook based on a Core i processor with a high DPI screen, and Microsoft was able to cram it into the Surface 3 Pro. That's the gist of it. And on top of that, they have this Bluetooth stylus here. Now, the one negative with this stylus is there's really no place to put it. There's this rubber strap. Let me see if I can show you. Microsoft actually sells this little strap here if you want to add it to your keyboard, and that's what holds the pen, or holds the stylus, I should say. So that kind of stinks, but yeah, they do. I forget what the price is. It's a couple bucks for that little adhesive strip. And the performance of this thing is awesome, though. So the display stack is really thin on the Surface Pro 3, so that when you're writing on the glass, it doesn't feel like you're penetrating a thick piece of glass. It feels like where the pen tip is touching is where you're writing. It's also really fast and really precise. Definitely the best stylus I've ever used in terms of, one of these all-in-one devices. It's really cool. Plus, they've integrated, just some kind of usable features with this button here at the tip. If you have your Surface Pro 3 turned on and it's just sitting next to you, and you click the button on the top like a pen, it would automatically launch OneNote and bring you right into a fresh note so you can take notes, annotate something, whatever. Just like smart little features like that. Now, in terms of the build quality and performance of the tablet itself, this thing's pretty nice. So I'm gonna talk about the keyboard first, because this is easy. It's a little thinner than the previous gen, and it has a much better touchpad, though it's still not a great touchpad. It's good. It works much better than the previous gen. It's good for pinching and zooming, but it doesn't track perfectly. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is better than the last gen. The type cover is also very good, like the previous gen, though making it a little thinner does reduce key travel, and Microsoft's kind of pushing it there. I would like a little more travel. I like the travel on the previous gen, but overall, if you want a thin light keyboard, the accessories are still awesome. Now, for the tablet itself, this thing rocks. So I know some people kind of are put off by the 3:2 aspect ratio. It doesn't even feel different than the Surface 2 Pro. It's just you end up with more pixels. It's not a huge difference. The 800 grams for the tablet is really manageable. There's really no fatigue. This is a Core i5 model with 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD. So that's the thinnest Core i-based device out there.
That's amazing.
I'm just impressed that there's that much horsepower in this little thing that I'm holding.
Yeah,
the cameras are decent. You have 5 megapixel front and back. They can both capture in HD. You still have this little ridge for the active cooler inside. Now, if you watched Microsoft's webcast, they said this thing's totally silent. You can't hear it. And that's true about 85% of the time. But when you're running benchmarks and you're beating on it and the fan spins up all the way, you can definitely hear it. It's quieter than, 90% of the laptops I've tested, but it is not silent. You can hear it. And the major addition to the chassis is the new kickstand. Previous gen had 2 positions. This one has the standard 22 degrees, but the rest is a friction hinge. So you can basically move it wherever you want, and it's going to stay. So that's a nice upgrade. Definitely more useful than the previous gen. And the other thing Microsoft did, I know I'm talking a lot. I'm going to take a break in 1 second. If you were using the type cover with the previous gen, it's kind of flappy. It's kind of wobbly. So if you put it on your lap, it's not totally secure. But with the Surface Pro 3, there is actually a huge magnet. This whole length of the keyboard here is a magnet. And if you push that up, it will stick to the screen like that. And then it's much more secure, much more like a laptop. So Microsoft definitely put a lot of thought into this guy. I hope you guys come back to the site and check out the full review. I think you're going to be surprised by all the stuff this thing has to offer.
Yeah, when it comes to the Surface Pro 3, when I saw the presentation, following along pretty well. I've been pining for a machine that can do everything since, smartphones, UMPCs, tablets, the first generation, the second generation, the BS style of iPad computing, which is not really computing, Samsung trying to emulate it with Android, and Windows 8 trying to smash everything together. And with this product, I think it's getting closer than ever to it, but there still looks like there's some compromises. As a tablet, it's pretty heavy as a tablet. It's light for a laptop. That keyboards thing is still optional because I think that adds another $130. Is that right? It's $160. So you're going to get, I really think Microsoft should include that to really say, look, we're not screwing around anymore. This is the way it works. Dave, you got any thoughts about the Pro 3?
Yeah, I was just looking at that thing and I was thinking to myself, is that keyboard as huge as it looks? I mean, you're a big guy and that thing looks large.
Well, it's got to cover a 12-inch screen, so it's fairly large. But I don't know. This is not a heavy, unwieldy piece of kit to carry around. This is.
So
I mean, look at that. Look at that. It's so thin.
yeah, no, it's crazy thin. So compare that to like your super thin, average super thin ultrabook on the market.
Mhm.
How does that add up? Is it that much lighter and thinner? Does it?
It's noticeably. I have an XPS 12 Ultrabook that I carry around.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
it's noticeably thinner, definitely lighter. I didn't actually measure, so I'm not going to throw any numbers out there. Now I'll tell you where the Surface is better and where the laptop is better, at least for my use cases. The the laptop is better, in my opinion, when I need to work in a, I don't know, where I can actually put it on my lap, or I have like a weird spot where I need to kind of cram it into a small spot and get some work done.
Right.
You'd think that the smaller tablet would be better in that regard, but because it has the kickstand and not a, a rigid hinge where it's attached to
Right.
the keyboard, it's a little more unwieldy. It's not just right. But in terms of overall portability, I would much rather carry this tiny thing around than anything else if my work entailed writing, editing photos. Maybe that's about it. If I needed to have a bunch of connectivity and I'm crunching video and all that kind of stuff, I'd still probably opt for my laptop. But Microsoft's gotten closer than, in my opinion, than anybody else to coming out with a tablet that could replace a laptop. Though to qualify that, I have trouble calling this thing a tablet. It's a convertible. The Surface
Yeah.
RT is the tablet. The Pro, in my opinion, is a two-in-one device. So
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. I mean, I would compare it to, for example, like Lenovo's ThinkPad X1 Carbon, where you're talking about a super thin device, it weighing in at under 3 pounds, and the full notebook experience. But it's nice to see Microsoft continuing to innovate there, because you've now got this sort of tweener area covered, where folks like you, like I tend to, when I travel, I would opt for a tad more bulk and just deal with a full size ultrabook in my bag, which isn't a whole lot. It's an ultrabook. It's really light. But there's plenty of folks that just want all that portability. For what I use my notebook for when I travel, that machine, the Surface Pro 3 would cover it. I mean, would definitely cover it. I mean, maybe a video crunch application or two, but even then, I think it would probably get by. And I'm not doing any heavy duty video editing on the road. I'm doing some quick cuts, that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, I think it's good stuff. I mean, and I just love to see, like you noted, the kind of horsepower that you get in that height. It's like, my God, it's impressive.
Yeah, when they're talking about
I agree.
having up to an i7 in there, and the pricing structure didn't seem so terrible, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's really expensive for a tablet. Yeah, but you're starting off, I believe, at 256 gigabytes. That's the lowest capacity? Like, you're starting off
Oh, no,
pretty
no.
high.
The 799 model is a Core i3 with only a 64 gig tablet.
Oh, 64. We're still getting 64 gigabytes of space. A lot of tablets, you got to pay extra to get to that level when it comes to it. But yeah, we're starting with a Core i3.
So can I make one quick point, just so I want to make sure I get this out. I had this conversation with tons of people. I don't think you should compare prices to tablets. You should compare prices to multi-touch ultrabooks. And when you get to that point, it's sort of a different comparison. If you compare it to a 12-inch Android tablet with a 2560 screen, you might look at this and go, wow, the Surface Pro 3 is expensive. But if you compare it to a 12-inch ultrabook or a 12-inch convertible with the high DPI display and a Core processor, the pricing is much closer. There is a bit of a premium for the Surface, but it's not crazy.
I can see that point being it's a good distinction, because that's a real computer. I mean, it's like the old school definition of a computer. It happens to have multi-touch, and it does have this tablet style interface. The one thing, it's not like I hate this product. I don't. I'm really excited about it. I'm looking forward to having a one device that can do everything. If they could build a battery docking keyboard that actually does have a rigid hinge, something like ASUS has, I think that would finally put it over the top. I'm not saying to replace the type cover or the touch cover. Just give the option for that, so we can all stop complaining about the kickstand. The kickstand's a good idea, but it's not exactly going to help you replace a laptop on a one-to-one kind of level. That's the one thing I think they're missing.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would
No,
tend
that's
to
a good,
agree.
good point.
I mean, you'd hate for Microsoft to, come out with their own laptop, because that would cause all sorts of havoc in the market. But if somebody put the same kind of effort into an ultra or a convertible that Microsoft did, but with that more rigid hinge, I think it would be pretty awesome.
Let's talk.
I wonder how proprietary the connector is. It probably isn't. I wonder if some aftermarket guys could come out with a full mechanical keyboard that would just snap into that sucker.
Well, it has USB, so you can technically just plug in whatever you want.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, but I mean,
Exactly.
something that clips in nice and neat, like Ayaz is looking for.
Yep.
One day it'll happen. One day I'll find the device that rules them all. Amazon's trying that with their living room device. They're trying to be the one box you have with the Fire TV. This device was rumored for a long time. It seemed like a natural extension. Folks who don't remember, Amazon didn't have its own set-top box. You get their app on Roku, or you can get it on PlayStation, Xbox. I don't actually, maybe not Xbox, but you can get it on a lot of other devices. So Amazon said,
Sure.
to heck with it. Here's our own device, $100. Lots of power is the claim. What did you guys find when you tried out the Fire TV, Dave?
I think power is relative. This is an interesting device for sure. For $99, you are getting essentially a sort of a mid-range to low-end tablet processor. Really, what you're talking about here? You're talking about a quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 at 1.7 gigahertz. It's the previous generation Qualcomm Adreno 320 graphics, not even the 330. 2 gig of RAM and 8 gigs of internal storage. But I mean, it's only $99, so it's all relative. What's interesting about the Fire TV and what's interesting about all the media streamers that came before it is that, when you talk about devices like Roku, like the Boxy Box, where they lacked was ecosystem, and we all love them for integrating and bringing in all these streaming services, the Netflix, the Hulu, the YouTube, all of that beautiful cord cutter stuff, right? That goes into these streamers. But really, to really get that device to the next level, you need ecosystem and you need infrastructure. And certainly Apple can bring that to bear with the Apple TV. Google certainly can with their product. And now Amazon, of course, with their ecosystem and Amazon Prime and their cloud services for storage, come out with the Fire TV, and here you go. Now you've got a device that offers all that good streaming stuff that we're used to, that we love, the Netflix, Hulu Plus, and you've got Amazon Prime. So really, the differentiator here, and what I look at with this device, in addition to there being some novel features to it, which we can talk about. The difference here is if you're an Amazon Prime customer now, you will love this because it gives you instant, clean, snappy access with voice search capabilities to all of that content that you normally would have had to go through another device for, in what you would, I guess, consider more of a native sort of experience. You're already connected. It's all set up. It's clean. It's Amazon's interface, and it's snappy as heck. So good stuff. I mean, you get all that, all the audio, music services like Pandora and all that good stuff as well. You don't get HBO Go, which is available on Roku. A little bit of a shortcoming there. I'm wondering if Amazon's going to work on that. But, I think this device has that critical mass that could, really get it to a serious install base, just because Amazon's infrastructure is behind it. I think that's the key.
Yeah, when Amazon introduced this, they also released a commercial starring Gary Busey. I'm not making this up. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. Gary Busey showing off the voice search function because he wants to talk to his, like anything. I think he talks to a lamp and it didn't make him happy.
Right.
But they play up this voice search. Now, when I saw the original Amazon demo, I'm like, that looks really cool. I can ask it anything and it'll search everywhere. But then it turned out that's not necessarily the truth, is it, Dave?
No, it doesn't work within apps. So if you fire up the Netflix app, if you fire up, watch ESPN or Hulu Plus, you're not gonna get your voice search functionality there. You get your voice search functionality within Amazon's content, and so you certainly can pull up, lots of good content that way. But it's not within apps. It's within the console interface itself, and then within Amazon's content. And so, that's limited. I think they can probably expand on that. Maybe, I don't know how you would build connectors for that with some of these apps. I would imagine, they would be motivated to work on that. I would think, make it better that way. But yeah, it's definitely a valuable functionality. It would be a lot more valuable if it worked anywhere. That would be awesome, right? That would be the knockout, or one of the knockouts. The other thing it does is game. So it does have some interesting gaming capabilities. And Jennifer Johnson did our review for this, and she, fired up a couple of games, checked them out, and it also has an optional for $40. You can buy a game controller. Looks a lot like a standard console controller, connects wirelessly, and so pretty interesting stuff. Gaming capability, voice control. I don't know, and of course, again, Amazon's services behind it, I think, make it a compelling option for only $99. Almost can't go wrong.
The controller at $40, I mean, that's like almost half of the actual box. If you buy two, you're in for another $80. It seems like it's a great idea, but I don't know if there's enough of, like as you were saying, critical mass for gaming when it comes to this kind of casual style. They're almost smartphone games, because I mean, this is running Android. So it's only a matter of time before this thing is getting every single Android app, if it's going to be tweaked for television. That whole Android on TV thing is another mess I don't even want to touch right now, because we could just go on forever with this.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, if you think about the controller, the cost of the controller, the average console controller is more like $60. So it's competitive, I guess. But yeah, you're talking about sort of a casual gaming experience, stuff for the kids to keep them busy. Maybe some stuff for you if you're a Candy Crusher or something like that. These boxes, I think, are going to continue to evolve. And I think for me, I looked at the specs and I'm thinking to myself, for $99, I guess that's about all you can expect. But I would love to see more horsepower on something like this so that it could do some console competitive gaming. Here's a good use case application for NVIDIA's Tegra K1. Like if you saw, if we had a really higher end tablet ARM-based processor in this thing, like an NVIDIA Tegra K1, for example, now you're talking some juice and some more capable gaming. You're approaching console quality graphics at the higher end in certain applications. Maybe not quite, but impressive graphics. And so you can do some neat things in this form factor, I think, down the road.
Yes, as I kvetch about pricing, let me talk about free stuff. So I like getting free stuff. I'm sure everybody likes getting free stuff. Marco, would you guys have any hints about any contests where you'd be giving away stuff?
I have more than hints. We're this close to being able to actually start the giveaway. I'm waiting for confirmation on a case and a cooler, and that's it. However, I think we've been teasing enough, and I need to give some details. This system that we are going to give away next is going to be the most powerful rig we have built to date. It will have an Intel Core i7-4960X, an EVGA X79 motherboard, EVGA GeForce graphics, EVGA power supply, 16 gigs of Kingston RAM, and a Kingston SSD. We're talking killer top of the line processor. You can't buy a faster processor.
$1,000
top of the line
Intel
across
processor.
the board. And, we're going to keep it super easy to give it away like our previous contests. We want you to like a couple of pages and participate in the Hot Hardware community and comment on some stories, maybe some articles, share some stuff, nothing crazy. But, yeah, it's going to be that easy. We're this close. If I had gotten an email earlier today, I would have announced everything. We're just not quite ready, but something killer is coming.
All right. So if you're wondering, hey, where should I participate? Where on earth should I be a talkative community member? Go to hothardware.com. I was just chatting about the comments we saw on the I think it was the OCZ, where the fellow really enjoyed Christopher. He really enjoyed the review and the specs.
Come by,
I don't know
comment, get aroused.
Yeah, he would get aroused with this giveaway. Let me tell you.
So I don't know if that's the kind of commentary you're looking for. But anyway, contest details, everything else we're talking about on today's episode, available at hothardware.com and all around the web. If you watch this show, you know how this goes. Twitter.com/hothardware, Facebook.com/hothardware, YouTube.com/hothardwarevids, Google Plus, plus.google.com/plus/hothardware. And I think that's everywhere if you want to go there. There's also, there's an old school RSS feed still available if you're still into that. I know it sounds old school. Email newsletters. How else? There are apps, right? And pretty much. And again,
there's an iOS app. Definitely needs updating though.
Yeah. So go to the webs, whatever. Still got that. HotHardware.com. Is there anything else we should say before we say goodnight?
Subscribe to our channel because you'll get more YouTube-ness from us that way.
At youtube.com/hothardwarevids.
Yes, sir.
I think that does it. I think that does it for us. Happy Memorial Day to everybody, and thanks for stopping by.